Winter months. During the summer, boat activity creates too much of a hazard for divers. Water access is obtained by walking through the wildlife preserve on the left side of McLaughlin Street. I've not had any parking or access problems here in the past, but as usual, I recommend that divers go in small groups and use basic common courtesy.
Garvies Point has been an old mooring and dumping area for decades, and as such, the bottom is literally covered with lost old bottles. What divers have to do to recover these older bottles is to swim a good ways offshore. The good bottle sites are probably between 100 and 200 yards offshore. Quite a little bit of a swim. The bottom composition changes very quickly as you swim off from shore. It changes from sand, then you pass a rock bed that runs parallel to the beach, and then you're into mud and silt. Divers have to use proper buoyancy control and hover over this silt. Otherwise, they quickly reduce visibility to zero. They wouldn't be able to see anything. As you navigate offshore, you want to just look for any bottles that are laying on the surface. You don't want to pick up the newer bottles. And how you tell the older bottles from the newer ones is that you look for the neck. You want to find the cork-style necks, and more importantly, you want to find the blob-top necks. These indicate age dating back to the late 1800s. Of course, if you spot any torpedo bottom bottles or round bottoms, you want to grab those immediately. Also, another good trick of the trade is that all of these sailboats and motor vessels that are moored here each year use mushroom anchors. These mushroom anchors, every time there's a storm and that boat is pushed by the force of the storm, that mushroom anchor actually dredges up the bottom. And within that anchor, you'll find a conglomeration of bottles. So anytime, as you're swimming offshore, you spot a chain, swim to one end of the chain, find that anchor, and then very quickly look at the group of bottles, looking at the necks and looking at the bottoms of the bottles, pick out the old ones, and then continue on your way.
Most diving is done to the left or west of the small dock, due to a mud hole located to the right. Always plan dives here at incoming or high slack. There's not much of a current, but visibility will be significantly better during the end of an incoming tide. A short distance offshore, divers should find some large rocks that lie parallel to the beach. As you proceed out, the bottom will change from sand to hard mud, and then finally to a soft, silty mud. Divers must remember to stay neutrally buoyant and stay off the bottom. Try not to kick up any of the silt with your fins. Another good idea is to keep moving. By continuing to swim, divers can stay ahead of whatever silt they have stirred up. Of course, this also means that you must be able to recover and bag bottles without stopping. It seems that beneath the silty bottom is nearly an endless supply of antique bottles.
Louis, where are you going today? Were you going to swim offshore?
Yeah, I'm going to take the long swim. I'll head out to the red channel marker and make a left towards the white marker out there.
Oh, that's quite a haul. That's got to be, what, 200 yards?
Yeah, it's a long swim, but it seems to be worth it. I'm going to go out there and look for those marmalade jaws and some ink wells, things of that nature.
Beautiful. Steve, is that a new type of glove or something? What is that?
It's a new dry glove. Vulcanized mitt, latex seal, pile lined on the inside, so nice and warm, nice and toasty. You're able to move your fingers.
Where the warmth comes from the pile inside?
The warmth comes from the pile inside, and after a while, your body heat helps warm that up. It's like wearing a pair of lined gloves in a snowstorm.
Beautiful.
They stay dry.
And it seals to your wrist seal?
Seals to the wrist seal, either over the top or underneath.
Now, is there any type of equalization that has to go on as you descend, or not?
As you descend, it'll compress, but because it goes underneath or over the wrist seal, air can still get into your gloves. And if you raise your hand up, you can get air in. When you squeeze the glove, you can compress air out.
No, actually, Steve and I are going to break off a little bit to the right. It's still offshore, maybe 100 to 150 yards. There's still quite a swim. But there's a spot where the whole bottom seems to be completely blanketed with bottles. So we're just going to hover there, and we'll try to pick out the older blob top style necks, and hopefully a torpedo. You know, we'll see.
Excellent.
But with this water temperature, who knows?
Due to the extreme winter temperatures, Mike is wearing a neoprene ice cap for additional warmth and protection. Today we'll be utilizing single Sherwood Genesis tanks, which will provide more than an adequate air supply for our hour-long shallow water submersion.
Is that the new quick release on the inflator, Steve? Really makes it nice and easy now. Much easier to grab. The old knob at the end, even with gloves on, it's easy to hook up. You can score some.
Now that we're all suited up, it's time to head down to the beach and go diving. Fortunately, the walk from the car to the water's edge is not that far. We use Amphibico video housings to film all the underwater scenes of Dive Wreck Valley. Divers can use the pier as a staging area or just wade into the shallow surf. Lou carries the float-mounted dive flag for our team. A dive flag is not only the law, but it helps to ensure that passing motorboats are aware of the presence of divers. Dive flags are absolutely mandatory when exploring any of Long Island's beach sites. Stay tuned. When we return, we'll be descending in search of antique bottles. Quite good today. Although the water temperature is only a chilly 31 degrees and visibility only ranges from 4 to 5 feet, it's still more than enough for bottle hunting. The bottom composition found here basically consists of mud and silt. The main goal is to swim steadily offshore towards the good bottle area and check out any mooring chains that we pass on the way. Most of the Dive Wreck Valley team chooses to wear dry suits for thermal protection year-round. On cold water winter dives like this one, dry suits are no longer recommended. They're an absolute mandatory necessity. Our dive plan calls for a 1-hour exposure, which would never be possible if our team were exposed to the freezing 31-degree water temperatures. Dry suits also allow our divers to be much more comfortable while on the bottom, and therefore each dive, even these chilly winter excursions, becomes much more enjoyable and productive. Notice how Rick's entire face is protected from the extreme cold by the thin neoprene ice cap worn under his regular dry hood. Diver Lou Schreiner descends down one of the many mooring lines that are found at Garvies Point. The depth here averages 15 to 20 feet, but a slow, careful descent assures that Lou will not disturb the silty bottom. Lou carefully scans the bottom and finds a beautiful, intact Dundee marmalade jar sitting out in the open. These jars are one of the most prized, sought-after artifacts that can be recovered at this site. They date back to the late 1800s. Meanwhile, Ed has also found a mooring chain. Experienced divers know to always head for the mushroom anchor as they continually dredge up the bottom, usually leaving a nice conglomeration of bottles in the mushroom's base. Ed follows the chain towards its mushroom anchor and finds an assortment of bottles all nestled around the anchor. The first is a cork crown cap beer bottle from the 1920s. He takes his time to carefully store his artifact in a mesh bug bag before continuing his search. Ed chooses to leave several younger bottles in place. Taking them would only stir up the silty bottom and reduce visibility. Within only a few moments, Ed pulls a beautiful round-bottom blob top out of the mud. This particular bottle dates back to the late 1890s. This prized find is also carefully stored in his mesh bug bag. Only a short distance away, Lou is still harvesting a good assortment of quality antique bottles. As we continue to head offshore, we cross over several mooring anchor chains. It's important to check out every mooring that's found because each increases the chances of recovering good quality, collectible antique bottles. Following each to its anchor, we find the expected plowed-up pile of bottles to search through. Ed spots and picks up a nice old cork-top medicine bottle, again dating back to the late 1800s. As Ed continues his search, Rick is also making his way further offshore. On his way, he spots a small lost fluted anchor sitting in the mud. The anchor has little artifact or monetary value, so Rick leaves it to continue his search for bottles. Lou has run into a large boulder jutting out of the silty bottom. This hazard to navigation rises to within inches of the surface and is literally blanketed with marine life. Lou checks carefully around the perimeter of the big rock for bottles, then takes a moment to demonstrate how these beautiful plankton-eating anemones have the ability to retract their tentacles upon the touch. Hank Garvin has also found a mooring anchor chain as he was navigating offshore. He quickly makes his way to the mushroom anchor. It's Hank's first time at Garvies Point, but he too has learned quickly how productive a bottle site this can be. As Hank continues to search through the pile of old bottles, Lou spots an intact torpedo bottom blob top. These are the rarest, most sought-after bottles to be found here. Most date back to the 1860s, and this one is in near perfect condition. Almost simultaneously, Mike finds an intact round bottom blob top bottle from the same era. It's beautiful bottles like these that keep divers returning to Garvies Point time and time again. New bottles are, of course, also quite abundant at this site, so divers must be very selective with what they take. Anyone can fill a bag with bottles, but most will end up being modern. I recommend only taking cork top and blob top bottles. I would also highly recommend doing some reading and learning about bottle identification and collecting before diving the site. It will not only help you be more selective while diving, but in many cases will save you the work of dragging a bag full of worthless garbage back to your car. Silt is, of course, the main obstacle for divers to overcome during any successful bottle hunt here. As you can see, visibility can be quickly and dramatically reduced, making it very difficult to pick out valuable antique bottles. Surprisingly, even with the cold temperatures, we find a variety of marine life, including crabs and an occasional starfish on the otherwise barren, silty bottom. As divers get further offshore, they will pass over an area where the bottom is literally covered with bottles. This is the best location at Garvies Point, but you must look carefully and quickly, taking only the old bottles without disturbing the bottom. As you can see, this is no easy task. As soon as one bottle is disturbed, silt rises and the visibility is quickly reduced, often to zero. Divers should also monitor their air supply carefully. This area is a good 200 yards offshore, so you must leave plenty of air for the trip back to the beach. Rick picks up a small cork-top medicine bottle, which probably dates back to the early 1920s. Ed spots and quickly grabs an old clay pipe, another collectible item that should never be overlooked by divers. I spot a blob-top beer bottle resting on the silty bottom. Ed picks up an old wine bottle. Then the silt reduces visibility to a point where it's no longer productive to continue the search. Meanwhile, in the clearer inshore waters, Mike has found another perfect condition blob-top torpedo bottle. Please note that most Dive Wreck Valley filming trips are scheduled as open charter or beach dives. So if you're a certified diver with Northeast diving experience and would like to join us, give us a call. We'll be happy to supply you with our upcoming filming schedule as well as quite well. Most of the bottles recovered date back to the mid to late 1800s.
How'd you make out, Steve?
Huh?
How'd you make out?
Pretty good. Visibility was really bad, but there are bottles down there. I bet you'd be a really nice dive in clear water.
Yeah.
Nice old Prohibition whiskey bottle.
Oh, that's nice.
Lou not only found an assortment of blob tops, but this beautiful green inkwell. Altogether, our team recovered quite an assortment of bottles. The best include several blob top beer bottles, Dundee marmalade jars, torpedo bottom blob tops, as well as round bottom blob tops.